That guy's 2 cans shy of a 6-pack. Welcome back to Ty and That Guy. Wes Chatham's my good buddy Ty Franck, and we're super excited today. Why are we excited, Ty?
Because we're just excited people.
Every
day is an adventure. Every day is a thrill ride, start to finish.
It's fun being a podcast superstar. And
yes.
I don't mean to brag, but we're podcast superstars.
There's literally ones of people who agree with you.
What are we talking about today, Ty?
The James Cameron masterpiece, Terminator.
So good. So good. Do you remember the first time you saw it?
Yeah, this is not one that I saw at the theater. It came out when I think I was in high school when it came out. I don't know why, but I assumed it was a stupid movie. Like it came out and everybody at school was talking about it, that it was like Arnold.
In the context of the time of everything that was coming out, this was in the sci-fi wasteland. You know, this was like post Star Wars, and kind of early 80s is when even the post sci-fi wasteland was just getting too much. Yeah. And you know, if you were a video store rat and you go down the video store and you just rent every sci-fi thing that you could get your hand on, or every horror movie or whatever get your hand on, the derivative of the derivative of the derivative has just kind of, so you probably were just shell-shocked from just like, I've seen 20 of those.
And I had no idea who James Cameron was. I mean, nobody did at that point, right? The only thing he'd ever done was get fired off of Piranha 2. That name didn't mean anything to me. And at that point, Arnold hadn't done much. He was just kind of this weird meathead weightlifter, right? So people at school are like, oh man, Terminator is awesome. It's got Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. And I'm like, that doesn't sell me.
Well, he did Conan, and you're a Conan nut.
But I didn't see Conan until after I saw Terminator.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I didn't have the Conan version of Arnold in my head.
Yeah.
And just every description that people gave me of it sounded dumb. They're like, at one point, there's like this robot, and it only has one arm, and it's chasing this woman. And I'm like, that just sounds dumb, right? Then I think I wound up watching it at my friend's house on HBO or one of those, and being like, holy shit. The guys at school undersold this.
It's like you were Joseph Smith and there was like the gold TV, and it was like the God just wrote on the gold for you.
Yeah. And then I became a Terminator nut. And every time I get a new video playback device, it's one of the movies I buy. I've owned it on VHS, I've owned it on DVD, I've owned it on Blu-ray. I will say this though. So what I didn't know at the time is that I had seen a big chunk of the movie Terminator, and I didn't know it. Because remember, I told you that story about going to the drive-in, and then I went over to the other side, and what I didn't know at the time is Terminator was playing over there. And I saw parts of the movie, and I thought they were really cool. I was like, man, I wish I was watching the movie over on that other side.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
Right? Mostly, though, because I'm like 15 at the time, mostly the piece that I accidentally caught was the Linda Hamilton love scene.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember thinking, this movie looks good. I want to check this one out. But, that, and then the scene, I saw part of the scene with the motorcycle chase where he's throwing the pipe bombs and all that stuff. So I had seen pieces of it, and I just didn't know. And then later, when I watched it at my friend's house, I'm like, oh shit, this is that movie that I saw part of at the drive-in. And then, of course, I saw all the rest of it. But yeah.
I just showed it to my kids. I hope that's not bad to say publicly, but me and my kids watched it last night, and I am very liberal with movies. So people are like, "That's too violent. It's too whatever." It's like I see the video games they play, and I'm like, "No, we're gonna." And by the way, I take them to the arcade, and one of their favorite arcade games is Terminator, where you shoot all the Terminators and like da 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 has the gun. Like,
the one with the gun. Yeah,
the gun and wheels. And I push them towards that game because it's the least expensive. So then we sit there and we're like, da, 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 and we shoot, and then it goes on and on. It's an awesome game. So I'm like, they've played the game. They can watch Terminator. So we watched Terminator together, and it was like one of the great viewing experiences we ever had. Because my kids, it's hard to find a movie in their strike zone. It's got to be like every now and then, like Beastmaster in their strike zone. Ghostbusters, fucking loved. Gremlins, a little bit scary when in the thing in the cage or whatever, so we always kind of cut out early. Terminator, like we sat and watched it, and I was like, it's not just us. This movie has magic. They were fucking wrapped in the thing. And I was getting ready. I kind of watched them, and the scene when the guy's banging his girlfriend, Arnold comes, he's going to bust you up, man. Like that's like one of the pure horror scenes. Rick Rossovich, that's right.
The brilliant and famous Rick Rossovich.
But that's kind of one of the real horror scenes in the movie. So I was like, I might fast forward this. And Nat, my oldest, started laughing at the scene. And he was laughing when he's like, I'm going to bust you up, man, and hit him. And then when she was running and he shot her and she fell to the ground and everything. And then I was like, oh shit, is he a sociopath?
Yeah, he might be raising a little psychopath there.
I'm like, am I raising a sociopath? Like, this is how it happens. Like, I'm going to be the father of a sociopath. And then like, oh shit, like, am I going to start finding dead animals in the yard and stuff like that? And so the next day I was taking them home from school, and we would do what we always do. And then they were, as soon as they got in the car, all they wanted to talk about was Terminator and this and everything. And Nash said, hey dad, I have a little trick that they taught me at school, that if you get scared, like in a movie or something like that, you laugh at it. And when you laugh at it, it'll immediately make you feel better. And I was like, oh, okay. All right, I'll call the therapist off. I was going to have him committed.
There's like guys waiting outside your house with like a straight jacket. You're like waving them off. No.
False alarm. Yeah, false alarm. I'm not raising a fucking sociopath. But I watched it last night. That movie is special. And I really enjoy it. And I want to start with like, if you think about the setup, if you read the back of the movie case and the way, that there's a race of humans that have conquered the machines after this massive war, and the machines are so desperate, they send somebody back in time to kill the mother of the leader of the humans that raise up in the resistance. You're in. Like, it's a phenomenal premise.
By the way, another starting text crawl you don't need, because all of that is in the movie. You don't need it.
So I was like, fuck, man. When I watched it and I saw the text crawl, and I was like, shit, I gotta eat crow with Ty, because I hated the text crawl, because that text crawl tells you everything that you're going to learn.
Yes, you don't need it.
You don't need, you didn't. And I honestly, like, if I could go back, I don't think you need the prologue of them being in the future. Cut all that shit out. Start with them showing up and riding the lightning and hitting the ground. And then you're like, who the fuck are these people? And where are they? Because trust me, you're going to want to know what's going on with them. So I don't think they needed any of that. And that text crawl was the worst text crawl, because it takes away from the movie.
It does. It felt like a text crawl written entirely by studio notes.
Yeah. When I saw that text crawl, I was like, this is what Ty's talking about, because this sucks. But whenever I hear a great premise like that, sometimes a great premise is not great for a movie, because the movie never lives up to the premise.
Terminator, like Alien, Terminator spawned 1,000 ripoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are so many, this is a Terminator ripoff movies that came out after that. They're still making them. Like, I still watch stuff. I'm like, somebody saw Terminator and decided to make their own version. Here it is.
Oh, the Terminator movies are ripoff of the Terminator. And
there's only 2 Terminator movies.
There's only 2.
There's only 2.
There's only 2.
Yeah. People will lie to you and tell you that there's more after that, but those people are crazy.
Those people are crazy. I've tried to watch movies that have the title Terminator on them, but then you watch them and you're like, this isn't a Terminator movie. They should get in trouble for putting the title Terminator above there.
They should be sued.
Yeah. That's when you know that you've seen talent, because Michael Biehn talks about getting the audition for this movie. And there's a book called The Futurist, and it's about James Cameron. I love this book, and the whole Terminator section is like one of my favorites. But one of the things that they talk about is everybody, Stan Winston, Linda Hamilton, Michael Biehn, they got the call, they got the audition for this movie, and it was pitched like this. There are a couple of Roger Corman people, because Gillian Hurd worked as a producer for Roger Corman, and James Cameron was a art director, and a couple of Roger Corman guys, and a bodybuilder, and they're doing like this sci-fi movie in the time of wasteland of sci-fi movies when they were making these kind of things. So everybody thought it was a piece of shit. Michael Biehn went from Cat on a Hot Tin Roof audition and went to that audition. It happened everybody the same way. They would go to the audition, they would meet James Cameron, and they would recognize like right away, like, and it went from like, this is a piece of shit. Do I want to do this? Stan Winston said, I walked in there and I was like, feeling like a hot shot that they would beg me to get the movie. And he said, and I left begging at the end of the meeting. I was begging for the movie to do the movie once I saw James Cameron and saw what he did and everything. There's a story of Arnold where doing Conan 2, and he was getting an interview. He had like these shoes that he was trying on for they were wanting to get all the outfit and everything for the Terminator while he's on set of Conan 2. And they go, what is that? And he goes, it's just some piece of shit movie I'm going to do after this. And it was Terminator. So anyway, I just think that is so interesting that happened. And then like it transcended. And every time I'll do, something like that, a movie like at that, I'm always thinking, is this going to be a new James Cameron? And then I'm like, right. Nah.
But you never know. You never know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of directors who we think of as superstars now who got a low budget, sci-fi or horror movie was their first movie and knocked it out of the park. And everybody recognized, there's something special here.
He was fired off Piranha 2.
He was fired off Piranha 2.
If they called you right now and said, hey, there's a director, big fan of Expanse, he wants to talk to you about a project. He doesn't have a lot of credit. He did do a little bit of Piranha 2, and he was the art director at Roger Corman. You're going to be like, no. Dude, I don't want to fucking meet that guy. I don't want to fucking talk to that guy.
No, you would not take that meeting. Yep.
Yeah, you would not take that meeting. And somehow they put it all together. And they were supposed to shoot before Conan 2. And then what's his name? Dino Dan Laurentiis? What's his name?
Dino De Laurentiis, yeah.
And then he was like, no. We're exercising. We're pulling Arnold. So they had to do it, which the movie benefited because it gave them so much more time to prepare.
Yeah. I think more than anything, the movie Terminator established that here was a director with a writer-director, because he also wrote almost all of his own movies, a writer-director with such a unique visual style. I think that's what became exciting about him, right? Is the look of, like you call it, he jokingly called it blue light tech noir. Like everything's got a blue filter on it, and it's that tech noir kind of thing, even has the club name Tech Noir in there. That look was not a thing anybody else had pulled off before that. You look at like Blade Runner. Blade Runner is a very different visual feel to it than Terminator. Now, since Terminator came out, everybody has been trying to copy that. Everybody's been trying to rip that off.
What's interesting to me on this watching, which I don't know how I missed it until this watching. I think what kind of sparked it is when we did Escape from New York, and I found out that James Cameron worked with John Carpenter. He worked on Escape from New York. He was the art director on that movie. Then watching Terminator, I realized how inspired James Cameron was from John Carpenter.
Oh, and, how could you not be?
Yeah, how could you not be? But even like the score, which the score is fantastic. Like the score, the gritty underworld of Los Angeles, the dirty alleyways and the things and all of that. I was like, I did not like connect those dots until I found out he worked for him, and I was like, he was heavily inspired by him. And
by the way, if I got teleported to the alternate universe where John Carpenter directed Terminator, I'd watch it.
Oh yeah, I would watch it.
I'm down for that.
Yeah, I love the opening too, because you learn so much in the opening, because Arnold plops out of the sky, hits the ground, like eyes go up, looking around, he's jacked. This is what I really want to ask you. And I'm really glad we could do this podcast, because I've really been thinking about this, and I've been wanting to ask you for a long time. What do you think of Arnold's package?
There are two things that are true about that package. One, if you've seen it, you went looking for it, because it's hard to spot. You really got to focus in. You really got to kind of freeze frame in a couple of places to find it.
No, it's wide. It's out in the open. Maybe I got a cut. I saw some dongage last night. Maybe I got a director's cut.
It's mostly in shadow. It's hard to spot. The first time I ever noticed it was I was watching Terminator with a friend of mine at his house. He's like, you can see Arnold's dick here, right? I'm like, what? and he paused. He like freeze framed it on the two frames where it like swings out of the shadow for a second.
Was it on the upswing or the backswing?
I don't remember.
I think it's pretty clear. You can see his dong. Like it's clear. Like he's walking and it's like,
that's his dong. Then the second thing is that became less true when they did the Blu-ray transfer, because they did a really high fidelity Blu-ray transfer of the original print. And a lot of things that were sort of in shadow and hard to see on the VHS and older versions become much more visible in the Blu-ray version. If you're super into Arnold's dong, definitely get the Blu-ray version, because it has the fidelity where you can actually see it.
Because whatever version I saw last night, I was like, I do not remember his dong flopping around like that. I don't remember that. I don't remember seeing that.
If you watch it in the theatrical version, like if you went to the theater and saw it, or you watch it on VHS, it's mostly just shadows. You can't really see. It's just shadows.
Oh, I see.
But is because everything gets a little sharper and a little brighter when they do those transfers, and it's sharpened and brightened up enough. You're like, oh yeah, there it is.
So anyway, I think we've devoted enough time to Arnold's swinging dong, but it was nice. It was nice to have, you know. It was nice to see, because you're like, oh, okay, that robot's got a dong. Like they
wanted
enough.
it to be anatomically correct.
Correct. Do you think the Terminator could have sex?
I don't know. So there's so much complicated cardiovascular stuff that goes into achieving interaction. I don't know if they would have put all of
time
the
and effort
cardiovascular effort into making that fully functional.
Right.
I don't know. Doesn't seem like they would have. The great thing about that scene, though, is it leads up to our introduction of the Terminator with the amazing Bill Paxton playing one of the punks. They're up there at Griffith Observatory, right? I think that's where that scene takes place, is Griffith Park. So you got Bill Paxton, the other dude, the guy with the acne-scarred cheeks who's been in a ton of stuff. I can't remember his name, but he's been in a ton. So you got Bill Paxton, you got that guy who's been in a ton of stuff, and then whoever that third guy is, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then you get the scene of Bill Paxton talking shit to the big naked man, and then the punks learning to regret those decisions. And we get to see the Terminator in all of its horrifying deadliness.
And I think it's the first glimpse you have of Chet, where he's like, "You couple cans short of a six pack."
Oh, he's that scene. That is absolutely is Chet.
Yeah, that's Chet. That's Chet. We get a nice little preview of one of the greatest
Chet's out
comedic
drinking
characters
with
of
his
all
buddies.
time. Yeah, Chet. I fucking love Chet. Oh, so Michael Biehn talks about the hardest stunt, or probably the most physical thing that he saw during the whole movie, was that drop when he comes out of the lightning drops and he hits the ground. And he says it doesn't look like much, but they had a stunt guy, and they took the stunt guy like 15 feet or 10 feet in the air. And he was on like a 2x4, like balancing. And they say, quick, go. And he would like roll off and plop on the ground and hit the ground. I mean, that's fucking cement, man. That shit doesn't go. And so he goes, you know, you see all these other stunts. He goes, I ached for that guy. He was butt ass naked, middle of the night, slapping on the gross ass alleyway. If you go back and watch that, he thuds like a turd. I mean, it's like schmack. And he just, poof, and you're like, damn, that guy hits hard. And
Arnold's just there all posed in his like down on one knee in his action pose.
Yeah.
He doesn't hit the ground.
And it starts to tell the story of the difference between the two.
Yeah. We're not doing Terminator 2 today, but one thing I do like in Terminator 2 is the addition of the sort of bubble that disintegrates everything around it that the person arrives in. Because whenever I watch stuff like that where they're like, I'm sending you back in time and you're going to appear, I'm always like, what if something is there? What if there's like a wall or like a car was there? Do you just get stuck in that?
Oh, that's true.
So in Terminator 2, they've got like this bubble that disintegrates everything. And then when the bubble goes away, the person is in it. So they don't show that in Terminator, but they do show that that's how they show up in the second movie.
This was the first.
But there's still the electricity. There's like all the electricity in the air. Yeah. And that leads to one of my favorite lines in the movie. I quote it all the time, where Michael Biehn, you know, he drops out, hits the ground, he's naked, gets up, it goes to the homeless guy. The homeless guy goes, "Hey buddy, did you just see a real bright light?" I don't know why that line sticks in my head, but every now and then I'm just, "Hey buddy, did you just see a real bright light?"
And he steals that dude's pants.
He takes the homeless dude's pants.
My son noticed that, and at the end he goes, "Dad, he wore that guy's pants the whole movie, and he wasn't wearing underwear."
Nasty homeless pants.
He said he wasn't wearing underwear.
Nope.
I thought that was so funny.
He's freeballing it in some homeless pants.
Yeah, you get a sense of Arnold, how he takes his clothes, and then you get a sense of Michael Biehn. You kind of get the sense of the difference. Watching this movie, the new revelation to me is how good I thought Michael Biehn was in this movie.
Oh, so Michael Biehn is one of the great tragedies of Hollywood, because Michael Biehn should have been a fucking rock star. He was talented. He was good looking. He had this grittiness to him, this like honesty to his portrayals that, you know, a lot of actors can act, but they lack that feeling that like every moment is real. Michael Biehn had that in spades, and he was just so good. And the fact that he had some personal demons that kind of knocked him off of that path is really a great tragedy. But in this movie, this is Michael Biehn at the height of his powers.
At the height of his powers.
Yeah.
They talk about his audition and what he does. He is my favorite type of action hero.
Yeah.
He is the type of action hero who's a fully human being.
He's not a roided up freak.
He's not roided up. He's a total human being who's completely vulnerable and just fucking tough and has to overcome everything. He's scrappy. He's resourceful, but he's a human. He has limited resources, which made him so much more heroic going against an unstoppable machine like the Terminator. But also there's something childlike about him. You know, he was born in war and raised in war. So there's like, in some ways hardened and jaded, but in some ways super innocent. So he does such a great job of playing that. So when he says to Sarah Connor that he's in love with her because he saw her picture, you believe it, because he has no beauty in his life. He lives in a world of twisted metal and people that are trying to, machines that are trying to kill him. And he saw this one thing and he felt, and also you can think about the universe and how that was a tie-in and like they were meant to be. But I just thought, because as a kid, you know, it's all Arnold, like Arnold and this and the charisma, whatever. You don't realize the heavy lifting that Michael does in this movie, because he gives all exposition. He tells the story of the movie to Linda Hamilton. And so he has a heavy weight to carry, and he's so great at it. He does such a good job. And James Cameron does a good job too, because exposition scenes, they're shooting, they're racing the cars, like you're getting the story and you're not bored 1 minute. He doesn't slow down for anything.
And he writes it so that the Reese character is talking like a soldier would talk to another soldier. You know, he's giving a technical description, like you know, if a soldier's saying, we got an enemy incoming, they're carrying whatever, and describing the weapons and stuff, it's very sort of technical. That's how Michael Biehn talks to her, because he's been a soldier his entire life, and the only other people he ever talks to are soldiers. Cameron writes it so that it sounds like a soldier talking about the technical capabilities of the enemy to another soldier, which keeps it from being as exposition-y as it could be.
Arnold gets a phone book and starts going down the phone book and just killing some fucking Sarah Connors.
Yeah, and that is one of the things I loved about the way he sort of crafts this story, is both characters come back with imperfect information. The Reese character knows what Sarah Connor looks like because he has the picture, but the Terminator doesn't. He doesn't have a picture. There's no pictures of her. And he knows the name and he knows the city she lived in. So he does the machine-like methodical thing, which is you just find every Sarah Connor in the phone book and you kill them all. You're gonna get the right one eventually.
And it explains to you why Reese doesn't go to her right away and say, like, kidnap her and take her off somewhere and be like, all right, you know, this is what the thing is, because he has to wait for Arnold Schwarzenegger to move on her, because apparently, you know, they're infiltration unit, so they can't, and that is another thing I noticed. These guys are supposed to be infiltrated. You can't tell them apart. They sweat. They got, you know, this, blah, blah, blah. Why would it be Arnold Schwarzenegger? Why would it be a juiced out Austrian guy with a thick accent? Like, he doesn't exactly blend in. And, you know, I've done some reading about it, and Lance Henriksen was originally going to be the Terminator. I know this is sacrilegious, but this is what we do on this podcast. I would love to see that movie. I would love to see him as the Terminator. Him, that actor at that time specifically. Yeah. I know that they did it with what's his name in Terminator 2, and he was like an average guy, whatever. But Lance Henriksen, I think, would have been a phenomenal Terminator. I think that would have been a phenomenal movie. And it was a bit distracting to me now, thinking about the logic of the movie, being how Arnold was jacked up, because even when his skin and his body got burned off of him, he still had his strength. So then you're like, why are you putting all that, you know, flesh on him? That's just going to make it harder for him to blend in. So anyway, other than that, but then in the 80s, it just fucking worked, because we've never seen anybody physically like Arnold. And so when he shows up, you're like, oh my God, he's a fucking robot. He's fucking jacked out of his mind, you know?
And one of the things that the many sequels that don't actually exist fucked up is they made it so that every T-800 looks like Arnold. That's not how it was supposed to be. They were all supposed to be a little different so that they weren't immediately. And the flashback scene where the Terminator gets into the camp and starts shooting everybody at the camp in the future. That's not Arnold. That's Franco Columbo. So it's another big bodybuilder dude. You know, he was one of Arnold's old workout buddies, Franco Columbo was. But that's the idea, is they all kind of look different, but they're these big guys with flesh and stuff. This idea that they made 1,000 T-800s that all look exactly like Arnold, like that is such a screw up of the idea, because the whole point is you're not supposed to be able to recognize them on sight. And if they all look like Arnold, then once you've seen one, you know, like, oh, there's another Arnold over there, so that must be another T-800.
What's the difference between them just being in the exoskeleton or being in the, you know, like being all Arnolds, right? You know, and how did that make it through story? How did that make it through? How did that make it downstairs?
Because people don't care about logical world building, especially producers and people who, they're like, they should all look like Arnold because people love Arnold. It'll be cool. And if you're the nerd going, but that doesn't make any sense from a world building perspective, the studio wonks will laugh you out of the room. Yeah, they don't care about that.
Yeah, more Arnold, more Arnold. I do think that's an interesting situation where imagine if you started watching the news and it was like Ty Franks were just getting killed left and right. Like that would really fuck with you. You know what I'm saying? It would just be like, what is going on? Like,
and that's a great scene because we meet Sarah Connor, the hero Sarah Connor, and she's working at Bob's Big Boy and as a waitress. Nice buns. Then the other waitress comes up to her and goes, hey, look, that's how we find out, is the other waitress like, hey, she's got the same name as you. You're dead, honey.
Yeah, you're dead.
And it's that moment where she's looking and she's realizing, oh shit, somebody with exactly my name gets killed. And what I like about the Sarah Connor character in this is she's smart. She's not dumb. When she realizes that Sarah Connors are being killed, she calls the police.
Yes.
Which you should do. Yeah. Right? She calls the cops and she's like, I've seen all these people named Sarah Connor being killed. I think somebody's following me. I like that she's smart that way, that she's not just, a damsel waiting to be murdered.
This movie, I think, was lucky in a lot of ways. You know, one for Arnold and like it just coming together and working for him being the Terminator, finding Michael Biehn, casting Mike. Like I'm sure they got pressured to cast like Charlie Sheen or somebody,
Yeah.
And then Linda Hamilton, she's good in everything she's done and she's been great from there. But I think that this is a special performance. It's so grounded. And, you were talking earlier about grounded and authentic and real and every moment seems real. Like there's not a moment she's acting in this. She's behaving. She's sweet. She's shy, and then as she's the hero in the movie. And as she starts to gain her strength and she's like, get up, soldier, and yanks his ass up and moves it. You really believe that. And so she's a secret weapon of this movie.
Yeah. And I think my two favorite performances of her, even though they're very different from each other, are the two Terminator movies. I think James Cameron really knew how to get the best out of her. Because I think she's fantastic in Terminator 2 too. Even though it's a completely different character. Like it's the same person, but it's the 20 years later, 15 years later, whatever, and hardened by everything she's been through and tough as nails now. But with that Bob's Big Boy waitress still hiding under the surface.
So you're right. She did the smart thing. She called the cops. And also in this movie, what I remembered watching with the kids is I remember not knowing what Michael Biehn was up to in the beginning. Yeah. Like we've rewatched it so many times that you're like, okay, he's the good guy, but it is not clear he's the good guy. And it's clear
he steals a homeless guy's pants.
I mean, it's clear that Arnold's a bad guy.
Yeah.
But you don't really know what this guy's story is. And when she sees him, when she sees him following her, and then she goes into Tech Noir and he walks by and looks, it's some creepy shit. Like that would freak somebody out. That would freak somebody out if a bunch of
he looks crazy. He's got that big trench coat and the homeless guy pants, and he has a hungry look to him. He's a little gaunt, a little hungry looking. Mm-hmm. He looks like a guy who would follow you home and murder you.
There is something about cops, 80s cops movies, the atmosphere of the cops, like when she calls the police station, just the coffee.
They're all just smoking. All of them just smoking constantly.
Styrofoam cups, busting each other's balls. Yep. The captain's going to be pissed, but we don't care. That kind of the cynical attitude about everything.
The press is going to be short stroking it all over the place.
And Paul Winfield is just fantastic.
He's so good.
He's so good. And they're such good buddies in the thing.
The two of them together are fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead and say it, Ty. It's the thing we quote the most when she calls and she goes, I'm at Tech Noir.
Oh, yeah. I know it. It's on Pico. I have a Tech Noir shirt, and underneath it has the address, and it's Pico Boulevard.
I think you mentioned this earlier, but this is the first, because he's already blown away a lot of Sarah Connors. But is there more innocent bloodshed in this movie than a lot of other movies? Because when they go to Tech Noir, they're just mowing people down, and I'm like, Jesus Christ!
Arnold does take out a few innocent bystanders with his Uzi. So the thing with the Uzi is it is not a weapon known for its precision, and he's just kind of spraying it around. And if you watch the movie, he goes through 2 magazines. That's 60 rounds. He's just putting 60 rounds in the air and hoping one of them gets her. And at one point, like, somebody takes a bullet for her. Like, there's like a lady who's running behind her who gets mowed down in the back. I think at the end we'll talk about like some of our favorite sequences, but this is up there for me. Like the whole when he's walking through and she drops her wallet on the floor and she goes to pick it up and he misses her, and then he comes back. And the editing, the timing of the red light Reese, in the eye,
the red light, yes, yeah. And then Reese is catching wind of her and him, and then the red light, and it's like time, boom, and he shoots him, and then his hands twitch, and then he gets back up, and that's when you learn, he can't be killed, he can't be stopped. It was great. It was great storytelling, and she's running, and he fucking blows that one lady in her back, and she falls on top of her, and she can't get out, and you're like, they're killing people, they're killing regular people in this. They don't give a shit.
Much has been made of the fact that Arnold was not a great actor when he started. And obviously the language issue, the accent issue was part of it. But the thing that has always been true of Arnold, and I mentioned this a number of times in our Conan review, is Arnold has always been a fantastic physical actor. Like he knows how to move his body. I think part of that is posing and all that stuff is so important in bodybuilding. That awareness of your body, awareness of what your body looks like to others is so integral to that. He's very good on camera at positioning himself to get the best physical performance for the camera. And one of the things he does in that scene that you're talking about in the bar is he moves like a machine. Mm-hmm. Like when he's shooting the Uzi and then he kind of moves sideways and low, like that's not a human movement. That's a very machine-like movement to do that. Right. And he as he's moving through there and looking for her and scanning the crowd and moving the gun around, it's all very machine-like. And I think that's a big part of why he was so good in this, is he was so good at moving his body in a way where you're like, oh yeah, that's not a person, that's a machine right there.
Yeah. And when they get into the parking lot and they're still in that car, and he's telling, and when he tells her, he starts giving her a bit of what's going on. Do you think it would be easier because she almost believes him, and it's like, it would be easier to believe because you just saw the dude get fucking shot and then get back up. So it's a lot easier to swallow at that point. That whole car chase sequence, like once they get there and they steal the car and Arnold spots him with the police car and he's shooting and they're driving down the road and he's shooting and he's like, take the wheel and everything like that. Michael Biehn gives an interview and he talks about those car chases and he's like, I haven't been on a movie since where the camera cars were driving that fucking fast. He goes, it was, he says, when I was doing the back and the driving and like fucking like this, he goes, I was scared for my life. They were flying around corners. And James Cameron's one of those directors like, we're going to push this. We're going to push this envelope. We talked about, we haven't talked about it yet, but you and I watched Sorcerer. And we're talking about like, there's real danger in this movie. Yes. Somebody died making this movie. Yep. You watch Terminator and that car chase, we're so used to polished visual effects and car chase and stuff now, we don't really feel any danger. If you watch like Steve McQueen and Bullet and you watch that and you're like, somebody died making this fucking car race, which I think somebody did. But you watch this Terminator and you're like, how does nobody die? I mean, the shit that they were doing and ramming and pulling cars off and running full speed into brick walls and shit, it's insane.
This car chase isn't a car chase. This car chase is a gun battle in 2 cars. It's like a running gunfight, except instead of running and gunfighting, they are driving and gunfighting. And that's what makes it interesting, is it's not just I'm being chased and I have to drive fast to get away. Yeah, and the cars, they feel like they have weight. They're not CGI cars.
Yes.
When they slam into each other, it shakes, everything shakes, and it feels like everything's so heavy.
Yes, they use these older model cars from like the 70s, you know, like the heavy metal, big body cars, and it has that weight to it, that feeling to it. But also during all of this, he's dumping out all the exposition, and you're eating it up because he's like, and then, and then you know, Terminators and Future and you know, fucking, and she takes his hand and she bites down and draws blood, and he's like, unlike the Terminator, I feel pain. But it was like it was a wild ride, man. So when they're hauling ass, this is one of those things when he slams on his brakes and fucking Arnold runs headlong into the brick wall, like it smashed that car in half. I mean, and that's one of those old school metal big body cars. There's no telling how fast they were going to get that in there. And then all the cops show up. You know,
he slams the car in reverse to stop it in time, and he freezes up the transmission, which is what would happen. Like there's this like element of realism that is unexpected in an action movie. You know, action movie stars never like lock up the transmission in their car. That never happens. But yeah, I mean, he breaks the car, like doing this crazy stunt, breaks the car, and then he can't get away and they get arrested.
From a story perspective, everything that he told Sarah Connor, and you're watching this for the first time, what did you think about that when you learned about Skynet and the nuclear war and John Connor and all of those things?
This is where the opening scene in the future does undercut some of the tension of the movie.
I agree.
Because we know it's true. When he's telling her this, we already know that's true because we've seen it. We've seen the Terminator, the exoskeletons walking around, and we've seen the blasted hellscape nuclear future, right? So we're ahead of her, right?
But they also have a dream sequence before he gets to her, where he falls asleep in the car, and they go back and show the same. That had to be a studio note. I don't think James Cameron, because when he falls asleep and there's two dream sequences that take you back to that time.
Yep.
And so you don't need that in the beginning.
Yeah, there's the one where where he falls asleep next to the construction site.
Yeah.
So there's the machines going, and he dreams about the car chase where the flying thing is chasing the car where they use the bomb to blow up
Hunter killers. Yeah.
The hunter killer. Yeah. And then
his friend gets vaporized.
Yes.
His friend, you remember she was up there and she threw the thing, boom! It's like, whoa! My kids were like, where'd she go? They go, did she disappear? And I'm like, nah, she disappeared.
She disappeared. She's a cloud of dust.
Yeah.
And then the other dream sequence is where where they're hiding, and he dreams about being in the underground area, and then the Franco Colombo Terminator comes in and the dog barks, and we use dogs to find the Terminators, that whole conversation. I get why those things are in the movie, and I get that those scenes sort of ground the movie a little bit more in the Michael Biehn struggle. The issue that I have from a storytelling standpoint, and I love this movie. I mean, it's as close to a perfect movie as you get, so I'm not bashing the movie, but there's a version of the movie where you don't have the opening text scroll and you don't have the opening scene in the future, so that when Michael Biehn is saying this stuff to her, we're with her. We're like, is that why the guy didn't die when you shot him? And then later when she's in the police station and the Lance Henriksen character is like, oh, well, he was probably wearing body armor and that's why he didn't die when he got shot and all that stuff. Her disbelief is our disbelief, right? Yeah. We're like, well, I don't know. That seems kind of weird that he could do all that stuff. But we're with her rather than we're being ahead of her.
Yes.
Because we're always ahead of her.
That's a great point, because you would have lost your faith in what your misbelief is like when you're at the cop thing and you're like, oh, maybe he is crazy. Maybe this is and then maybe that guy is on PCP or whatever. And then it's just another great moment because it lulls you to sleep a little bit, A
little bit.
Before you go there, I want to make a comment before we leave the dream sequence. I think it's funny when they're out in the world, like out in the tangled metal world that they're in, and fighting these hunter killers, and they're blasting their plasma rifles and everything, and they come in and they're take a little break, and they come and they're walking. That one kid's going pew pew pew, and Michael Biehn points the plasma rifle at the kid with his finger on the trigger and goes, like, kidding around. Everything is like, Jesus Christ, like, could
not
you
good
imagine?
Trigger discipline.
But he pointed at the kid, like, could you imagine if one like bust loose and like vaporize the kid?
Sorry, kid.
Shit. Yeah, but they're such hardened people. They'd be like, shit, sorry, whatever. I mean,
and they're cooking rats.
Yeah. they're cooking. Oh, they're catching the rats and they're cooking. Yep. And he looks at the picture of her, and stares at it. Then Franco Colombo comes in and, they have that gunfight and everything. I think this is a perfect movie. I think the prologue and everything was a studio note because the mystery of these guys showing up and how streamlined and focused, how well written the movie is. There's not a moment wasted. The only note that kind of hit me a little bit the wrong way is that when Arnold ran into the wall and then the cops show up, they get Michael Biehn, they get Lyndall Hamilton, and they walk over to the cop car, and Arnold's not there. The Terminator's not there.
Yep.
And I felt like this isn't how the Terminator behaves because he wasn't. He was well enough to get up and walk away. He's going to come for Sarah Connor.
I hear what you're saying, and I think it's a good point. He was also damaged. His arm didn't work because he has to go back and fix his arm after that.
Yeah, but he was in that tanker explosion and he had the bad leg.
But the exoskeleton part of his arm was broken. He has to go fix it. Yeah, but maybe there's part of his programming where it's like repair yourself and then go back on mission.
In the machine place, he lost the bottom half of his legs and he still kept crawling.
Well, but at that point, it's not fixable, right? Like the right arm of the Terminator is broken, is damaged. The exoskeleton piece underneath is broken. So next time we see him, he's taking the fucked up eye out and he's fixing the arm and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, that's the justification I can come up with is that he went like, there's a ton of guys here with guns. I'm damaged. I'll pull back. I'll fix my damage and I'll go finish the mission. Yeah.
Okay. Because he was hurt in other times in the movies and he just kept going. But whatever. But I think another rival for the Tech Noir sequence is when he gets to the police station.
Yeah, that's probably the most famous sequence in the movie. And you should tell, since your kids have watched the movie with you and you're raising sociopaths, you should tell them that it's not okay to go shoot up a police station. And now this is LA. This is the 80s. This is the height of Rampart. I don't know how many cops in there were actually innocent. But I'm sure some of them were.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of them were.
They probably thought it was like their chickens coming home to roost. They're like, fuck, I probably owe this guy money. I probably killed one of somebody he knows or whatever. And he comes in there. Yeah, he's like, you're safe here. There's 30 cops in the building. My kids made note of that when they came and told the story. And he goes, there were 30 cops in the building. He came and just killed them all. They reenacted that whole scene when he went up to the front desk. And he was like, I'd like to see Sarah Connor, please. And the guy was like, sorry, buddy. And then, I'm like, that cop isn't on his game because they've been murdering Sarah Connors all over this fucking town.
Right?
You got Sarah Connor in there and holding her prisoner. And this fucking guy shows up and is like, and you're like, get out of here, buddy. So he goes back and then he goes, I'll be back. And it's funny because
his first use of I'll be back, which then wound up being a thing that showed up in tons of Arnold movies after this, became his catchphrase. There's something about the delivery of that line that just lands. It just lands, right?
There was one of the guys on
and
Cables.
By the way, you're right. So that desk sergeant, worst desk sergeant ever. Because one, look at that dude. He's dressed like a biker, right? He's dressed like a biker. He's got the, he's gigantic. It's Arnold. He's like 350 pounds of muscle. Got that weird accent. He's asking for...
350 pounds of muscle with a well-proportioned penis. Sorry.
With a well-proportioned penis. Yeah, only like a pound or two is penis of that 350.
Right.
Asks for the woman who was just brought in from a high-speed chase with gunfire and has the same name as all these other people being murdered. And he has no time to give that dude. He's just like, nah, come back later. Like
closing hours, creepy guy.
And he's just writing his notes or whatever, doing his little desk sergeant thing. I'm like, every single thing about that guy screams, we should pay attention to this, right?
Yeah.
Like the second Arnold walked out, the fact that he's not on the phone going, somebody just came in here. We should get some guys out here. We should check into this, right? Like worst desk sergeant ever. Like,
ever.
I don't know if this guy was drunk or high or what, but how do you not notice what's happening?
But him driving through the front door is so cool. That is like him leaving and coming back and just ramming through the front door and smashing that desk sergeant and getting out and just blazing away is so cool. And when he shoots that guy with a shotgun and that guy's on cables and it just yanks him out of frame, and you're like, Jesus Christ. He shoots my kids got a kick out of that one too. And then he kills Lance Henderson's partner and Paul Winfield, and he's like, motherfucker. And he comes out and kills him. You're like, ah, shit, man. Why did he kill those guys? You know?
Well, you don't see Paul Winfield dead. He's still alive. He's shot, but he's still alive. But Lance, I think Lance definitely gets killed.
I don't think Lance lived. But there's a part of me that wanted Michael Biehn, because that asshole, the worst psychiatrist ever, he might have been worse than the front desk guy.
But he gets his in Terminator 2.
Oh, yeah, but he's like so condescending. He's like, oh, yeah, so from the out of the town. Like, so, oh, okay, he's crazy as a loon. And you're like, wait, this is, what the fuck?
Yeah, you're the worst psychiatrist ever.
The worst psychiatrist ever. And he walks in the room not believing that guy and not caring what's wrong with him. Yep. He doesn't listen to anything. It's like, where did this guy come from?
It was the 80s. Everybody's super
But I wanted Michael Biehn to be like, see, motherfuckers, I told you. I fucking told you. You didn't listen to me.
Yep.
God, but he was humbler than I was. He just went to do his job and find Sarah Connor.
He just wanted to get her out of there.
But I do love when he goes in the office and Sarah, and she's like, hey, and she's like, it's me, Reese. And she comes and is with him. It's like, oh, now you believe him.
Yeah, now you're on board.
Yeah, now you're on board. Now get her out of there, Reese. How'd they escape there? I'm trying to remember. How'd they escape the prison?
He just gets her out, and they get out the door and they steal the car and take off. And then you get the scene in the underpass where they're under the freeway, and it's where he talks about how they use dogs to find Terminators, and he has the flashback to the Franco Colombo scene where he comes in and murders all those guys. And then here we get the first sort of fumbling romance things where, she just met this guy. She's been surrounded by all this murder. The thing she wants to know is, does he have a girlfriend?
Was that this scene?
No. Where she's like, yeah.
No. That's in the hotel room.
Oh, you're right. It is in the hotel room, but this scene isn't where she asks about the girls. She asks this scene about what the future is like.
Yeah, this is what she asked what the future's like. She's cold. Like. He tries to warm her up.
Yeah.
He falls asleep again, has another dream that's perfectly. I wish I could dream perfectly like that. And then he wakes up and then they head for the hotel. And another thing that was really cool, they get to the hotel. He says, I got to go out for supplies. He goes out and gets explosives, which is awesome. But she calls her mother, which whenever you watch something with your kids, you relive, the moments that you've forgotten because you watched it so much are reconnecting. And I forgot how cool of a moment it was. And I know that he talked as a cop, before.
Yep.
But when the camera pans and you see the door blowing off its hinges and it's smoking. So she's already had this loving conversation with her mother, and you're seeing that. And at the time you're like, why the fuck are you talking to your mom? But and then the camera pans and you see the door off the hinges smoking, and it's just mayhem in the house, and it goes to Arnold Schwarzenegger, and she has his mother's voice. What a great creepy horror moment. And you're like, oh no! And now he knows where they live.
Yep.
And you're like, oh God.
Yep.
So when he comes back and they make the explosives, that's when she sees something in him. When the vulnerability, what he grew up in, she has that sympathy. She's an empathetic person. And that's when she says, do you have anybody back home? Do you have?
Yeah.
And he's like, it's always been you. it's been, see, in this day and age, if you tell a woman that you saw a picture of her and you've always been in love with her, they're calling the cops.
They're calling
you're in
the cops.
trouble. Yeah, that's just not going to work. But whatever reason, it fucking worked in this movie. And she's like, she gets it. And then there's some love time in this, a little lovey. This is a little Ty sitting in the, sitting at the drive-in or standing. Drive-in, ooh, this is nice.
What's going on over here?
Yeah, this is nice. Michael Biehn is so hot. Oh, or was it? Oh.
I mean, Michael Biehn is pretty good looking.
He is good looking. And there's a little love making, and it's nice. And I really enjoyed it.
And apparently when he went out and bought the stuff to make plastic explosives, he failed to buy any condoms because there are some unintended consequences of this.
Yeah. Am I the mother of the future? Then the dog starts barking outside, and it's already been set up that dogs do not like Terminators. And then when he looks over, Michael Biehn is fantastic in this. He is fantastic. And I know it's probably when I watched Terminator as a kid, he wasn't the one that I was really zeroing in on. But now I look at it and I'm like, he's so good in this. And when he sees him, that reaction and straight to business and straight to getting on with it when they go.
Yep.
And that turns into that's the fuel truck chase sequence.
It's them in the truck with the pipe bombs, followed by
I love their Chevy pickup. It was like a 78 Chevrolet Silverado or something like that. It was like fucking awesome.
I mean, it's not as cool as the one in Terminator 2 where it's the El Gol landscaping guy's truck.
Oh, yeah.
This is the vehicle's maximum speed.
You made me want to say some stuff about 2, but we'll save it when we do 2.
Yeah, we'll save it. But anyway, so then we get the scenes of him using the pipe bombs that he's made. And we understand we've seen the Terminator get shot a bunch of times, and it's fine. We've seen it when it even did get damaged by the car wreck. It just fixed itself, right? It just repaired the damage and kept going. So we know how unstoppable this thing is at this point. And they have the conversation about, can we stop it? And Michael Biehn says, with these weapons, I don't know. And so now he's made these pipe bombs, and this is their best chance at this point to stop this thing, is the pipe bombs. And they keep not working, right? He throws them out, they blow up, and they just don't take him out. Then there's the moment where there's the big car wreck because Michael Biehn gets shot. She freaks out and rolls the truck. Arnold winds up getting run over by the fuel truck, and there's just this chaos on a bridge, right?
I love the run over scene too. He's like fucking, I mean, and he's like getting caught in gears.
It's so well filmed too, because you see his foot go up into the undercarriage and break, which is really important because later he's slow because he's got one leg that doesn't work.
He's limping, but he didn't go fix his limp.
No, because he's right behind them right now, and he's not surrounded by 60 cops.
Dude, it wasn't 60. They only had 30 cops at the police station. It wasn't 60. It was less than 60, and he would have fucking smoked them all. But anyway, go ahead. So this is a big turning point in Sarah Connor's arc, where once Reese gets hurt, where she starts to take control. She starts to take over, and she starts to discover this reservoir of strength that is legendary, that she's like, what? Who, me? I can't even balance my checkbook. Now she's starting to grab Reese and pull him along, and she's the one who's figuring out how to get away. It was a great moment where he's like, you keep running, and then she keeps running. So she is being the bait for Terminator. Terminator's running him down. He slips around. He throws a pipe bomb in the tailpipe. He jumps in the dumpster, and the thing slams shut on him. And then, boom, a huge explosion blows up the Terminator. She hits the ground. She rolls. She looks over, and she sees it, the roaring fire, and you're like, oh God, this is a moment of breathing. And she's crying and releasing everything.
And you see the Terminator climb out of the truck on fire and then collapse.
I forgot. That was that's a Mike Myers moment, you know?
Yeah, and it collapses in a way that looks like it's dying.
It's dead. By the way, I want to do a quick callback before we go further. There's a lot of Mike Myers in this, I think. And when he first goes through, there's a moment where he went through some flames and it burned his eyebrows off. And so there's a moment
that's where Michael Biehn blows the car up.
Blows the car up, right? Yeah. So and he's driving in his, it's like doom doom doom, like all that music, and he's looking like a shark, just going back and forth, and he's pale and he has the circles under his eyes, and his eyebrows are stored. I got a big Mike Myers vibe from him at that point. So he's on fire. He's moving. He hits the ground, and you're like, oh, fuck, the fire killed him. You know, it's like, and then he stands up. And what's interesting is that the first image that James Cameron had of the Terminator is when he was in Rome, because he got fired off of Piranha 2. He flew himself to Rome to break in the editing facility to edit his own movie because it was kind of criminal how he was taken off of it.
Yeah.
And he got pneumonia. He was almost starving. He would steal bedrolls in the morning from other people's tray. He would eat off people's food trays in the morning. That's how he would survive. And he was obsessed with like making this movie something because his name was going to be in it. It was the first thing that he's ever done.
Right.
And he ended up getting pneumonia, and he would like had fever dreams and sweats for 2 nights in a row. And one of the dreams were this metal skeleton robot climbing out of a roaring flames, and it was clawing its way to him with kitchen knives. And so he got to recreate that image of Terminator walking out of the flames, and that was what he saw in his dreams. And what's interesting is like there was an interview with Stan Winston. And the studio and everybody wanted like a different iterations and different changes and drawing, and to try different things of what the look of the Terminator could be. And at the end of the day, they went right back to that first sketch that James Cameron drew out of his dreams. So he that nightmare was like a a gift from the gods of like, this is the story that's going to make you.
Well, and he winds up using that imagery of the thing climbing after him with knives in Terminator 2 when the T-1000 is climbing up the car, turns its hands into knives and is pulling itself up the back of the car. So like that imagery really stuck with him, and he's used pieces of that dream in other stuff.
They get Reese into this machine, and there was something interesting. He's like, turn all the machines on, it'll disorient it. What did he mean by that? The motion of the stuff?
Yeah, there will be other things in the room that are moving and making noise. If you're the only thing moving and making noise in a big space, obviously a Terminator is going to lock right in on you, right?
Right.
But if there's a lot of stuff moving around and it's all making noise, it can cover their movements as they're trying to get away.
But what a cool place that play. I don't even know what it was or whatever, but it was really cool.
It's an action factory. Action movies always have factories and warehouses.
One day, like somebody be there, like, what do these things do? And it's like, we don't know.
It's just an action factory.
It's just when we need machiney looking stuff.
Yeah, stuff that moves up and down, and yeah.
So the skeleton's chasing him, and now, if anything, this movie, for the most part, like all the practical effects and everything, is not dated. If anything is dated, is some of the stop motion stuff or some of the like how they turn the torso. You could tell it's a puppet and certain things.
Yeah, and obviously when CGI became good enough, everybody stopped using stop motion. Stop motion just went away.
Yeah,
with CGI. And now when we see stop motion, it looks weird to us but at the time when I first saw this, it didn't look weird to me at all. Like, it was as good as anything else.
I mean, but Michael Biehn passed out. He's shot at this point. He's badly hurt. He passes out, and she fucking yanks his ass up and like, get up, soldier. And like, you're like, whoa, the transformation. Like, you're like, oh, this is the lady that gave birth to the leader of the future.
And it shows that Reese is not the standard 80s action star. He gets shot. He's hurt.
Yeah.
He can't do stuff. Right? Like, that's, you watch the standard 80s action movie, the guys are either at full capability or dead. There's no in between. But now we get to see a guy who was a very tough guy, but he's been shot and he's dying and he's hurt. He can't action star anymore.
And it makes his last act that much more heroic.
Yeah.
Because he's clinging to life, but he gets his shit together gets a crowbar or a metal bar.
One last burst of action.
One last burst of action. And what's so poetic about it is like, he knows that there's nothing that he could do against this guy. He's only going to just throw his body against it and slow it down enough where Sarah Connor could have a chance.
Yep.
And he fucking smacks the Terminator with the thing.
Well, he does break it. He does break one of its little hydraulic neck things.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, if you watch the scene, in one of the hits, he hits it hard enough, its head snaps over hard enough that, because it's got these two like hydraulics on each side.
I didn't know that.
One of them breaks, and it takes it longer to get its head back up because it's only has one side is working.
Yeah.
It's a nice little detail. It's a nice little detail in that moment.
And he gets the pipe bomb in there. He gets the pipe bomb in the middle of the thing.
Jams the pipe bomb into the exoskeleton and rolls away.
And blows it in half. Blows the exoskeleton in half. And then it's still coming after her, and it climbs through. Now, I thought this compressor thing was the coolest. Like, as a kid, I was like, what is this thing for?
What do you use that thing for? Just smashing stuff, I guess.
You can't put cars in there. Like, I know that cars have smashers, but you can't put cars, like, what you got to smash smaller things.
It's a device that was specially designed to crush 100 beer cans at once. Like, if you have a lot of beer cans, you need to crush them all for the recycling. You just put all your beer cans in there and crush them all at once.
They made that out of styrofoam. Now, does that look like styrofoam to you? That looks like...
It is a beautiful prop.
It's a beautiful prop. I love that thing. And she comes in there and she's, gives that 80s line, "You're terminated, fucker." Pulls the thing. It crushes. And it's so satisfying to watch him crush. It's been terrifying you for the whole movie, and it's crushing.
Yeah, watching the metal like squish out and deform as the thing comes down on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then this light goes... And then it's like, take a breath of air for the first time.
Yep.
And that beautiful Jeep at the end, that Renegade, love that thing.
You like the Jeep?
I love, dude, late 70s, early 80s, Jeeps, Broncos, and trucks are my jam. And it was such a cool Jeep. She's driving through that fucking kid trying to charge her $7 for that picture.
Yeah.
$7.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
hustle,
No, the kid. She even says pretty good scam, kid.
Yeah.
He's
pretty good.
He's
scam.
definitely scamming her.
Yeah, he's definitely scamming her. And then she gives that, great speech at the end. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I'm glad they did the little bit of voiceover rather than do another text scrawl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a little bit of Cameron also, because if you like anything with time travel, if you like sit, even if it's Back to the Future, like if you think it through.
Yeah, it never makes any sense.
It never makes sense. You can always find things, whatever. Yeah. And I feel like it was like Cameron saying, you could drive yourself crazy. Fuck it. This, it's a fucking movie. It's a good movie.
And Cameron is saying, yeah, it probably doesn't make sense. Don't worry about it. It's a movie.
Yeah. Don't fucking worry about it. And that's Terminator. All right.
Yeah. One of the
There's
greatest.
A storm coming.
Yeah, you better believe it.
You better believe it.
One of the greatest sci-fi action films ever made.
All right, let's go to the top 5. All right, put them up there.
Best James Cameron films. All righty.
Okay, the best James Cameron film of all time, without question, is Aliens.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not even a question. I would
not argue that.
For me, Terminator and T2 are my next favorites.
Okay.
I'm on board.
I thought the first Avatar was a lot of fun the first time I watched it. It's the only James Cameron movie I don't watch over and over again. Like, I've seen it, I enjoyed it, I had a great time, and I don't feel a need to watch it again.
You don't watch Titanic over and over again?
I don't. You're right.
You and I are spot on. Aliens, Terminator, and I am more Terminator than Terminator 2. For me, Terminator is before Terminator.
I would say I have a great deal of affection for The Abyss.
I do love The Abyss,
especially the director's cut of The Abyss that has the real ending on it. I think it's a masterpiece.
I really like The Abyss, but I took my kids to see Avatar 2, and that is another level of film. My mouth was wide open the whole time. It was so extraordinary visually what he created and what he did.
Those things are visual feasts. I don't love the story though. I don't love the storytelling.
I didn't like. I don't want to say I did. Like, Avatar was just meh to me. The first one, it like visually, it was like, okay, that's cool, everything. Avatar 2, the visuals were like another level. It was unlike anything I experienced before. Yeah. And my kids, it was like my kids when I watched Return of the Jedi. Like, they were like, what is this? What just happened? So I think that Avatar 2 is a giant leap forward in filmmaking and filmmaking technology. And I think it's an important film, more so than the first Avatar. I think it's a better film all the way around. So do you want to
do that one as number 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, number 5 is Avatar. I would not have thought that. But I was hoping we were going to get a 5 for 5 for the patrons, because let's see what they have.
I bet they did True Lies.
Oh, let's see what they got.
Which is a good movie.
Aliens.
Yes.
Yep. Terminator.
Of course.
Yes.
Terminator 2.
Yep.
Right.
The Abyss. They're 4 for 4.
And then True Lies.
True Lies.
Yeah. Almost. I probably fucked it up.
But I'm in favor of Jamie Lee Curtis dancing around in her underwear as much as the next guy. I'm in favor of that as much as the next guy.
Yeah. We got Arnold's dong and Jamie Curtis in lingerie.
Yep.
Thank you guys for hanging out. We appreciate it. I hope you love Terminator as much as we love Terminator. Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty. I'll be back.